standing in the fields of importing, storing and distributing of food products in Egypt. The agreement is part of a comprehensive plan to attract foreign investments, to establish the International Logistics Center and build a modern grain silo, mainly wheat silos, to help prevent the loss of billions of dollars worth of wheat per year.
A memorandum of understanding was signed between Minister of Supply and Internal Trade Khalid Hanafi and Canada's Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Trade and Development John Bird. The memorandum includes attracting foreign investments aiming at establishing modern storage centers for food commodities, silos, and develop distribution networks in Egypt. The minister said that this memorandum was signed in the context of Egypt and related to the Suez Canal Access Project. That there are many other projects related to the Suez Canal Access Project, such as constructing new ports, storage centers, and logistics centers. Hanafi said that it also will enhance the mutual commercial relations between the two countries, especially on the areas of trade, services, investment, and exchange of experiences. Meanwhile, Minister of Investment Ashraf Salman has called on the U.S. businessmen to participate in the planned economic summit in Egypt in March. The remarks were made during a meeting with members of the U.S. Egyptian Business Council and the American Chamber of Commerce in Washington. Salman said that Egypt is keen on achieving reform and building a strong and real economy. Salman stressed that the Egyptian market has started to recover, reiterating that the country's economic reform focuses on reducing poverty and unemployment rates.
Prime Minister Ibrahim Mahlab attended on Monday the opening of a conference to launch a national initiative for training for jobs as part of an effort to deal with the unemployment. Mahlab called on participants to discuss the problems of Egyptian job markets with objectivity. He said that feasible solutions should be found and strategies for implementation has to be drawn. Now to these, Linda Abdul Latif has more.
The national conference that is held to discuss the National Plan of Training for Employment project. This project is presented by the Ministry of Manpower and Immigration with the aim of training the youth on the skills needed at the labor market.
الهدف الأساسي إن إحنا كلنا نوحد الجهود في الدولة.
The main purpose of this project is to unify the efforts of all authorities in providing real training that is needed in the labor market. We will also encourage the youth on becoming entrepreneurs and on joining the private sector. We also want to achieve job security. The main purpose of this plan as well is to reach the international unemployment rate. Because we have a high unemployment rate here in Egypt, we have a lot of youth and investments, but the trained youth do not have what it takes to be competitive. So we need to have successful trainings that prepare them to meet the demands of the labor market.
تشريعاتنا كمان بتحقق الأمان الوظيفي.
Training is a very important thing. When you are looking for a job, you have to have a special training for this job. This is very important to be compatible. You know, if we have a labor without training, without skills, this is very hard to find a proper job for him.
For his part, Mahlab emphasized on the importance on the need to connect education and training policies to the needs of the job market and to the requirements of the country's strategic developmental projects. The conference was also attended by representatives of international organizations and experts in the fields of training and employment, besides a number of ministers who will be participating in the implementation of this project.
There are different programs that we have launched since the beginning of this year. So far we started the training of about 10,000 through this MOU that we signed with the Ministry of Trade and Industry. There is another specialized training that we are performing in our ministry. We have an opportunity to train about 5,000 young chaps in this specialized training, in addition to the diploma that we provide through the Information Technology Institute under the ministry.
We have already within the payroll of the ministry the Central Development Agency, which is one of the main implementation arm that it is responsible for vocational training in the field of construction and development. We have already 62 training centers along along the country. And the most important now is improving the capacity and the efficiency and the delivery of training within this training center, which is already we are working on, and linking the training with employment, so that we make sure that the trainees will immediately after their training and passing the training will have the job opportunity, which is the most important thing, how to link the demand with the training, not to be supply driven but demand driven.
The national plan of training for employment aims at solving a very serious issue facing the country. Egypt has around 3 million unemployed, representing around 13.1% of the labor force, and therefore achieving the targets of this national plan would greatly have decreased the unemployment rate and overcome poverty. Linda Abdulatif, Now TV International.
In coordination with the Japanese Embassy in Cairo, the Ministry of Youth and Sports held a meeting with a delegation from the Japan International Cooperation Agency. The meeting aimed at discussing means of bilateral cooperation between Egypt and Japan, mainly in the domain of youth. Now TV's Abir Shusha was there.
International Cooperation Agency JICA assists and supports partner countries in the field of official development assistance. In coordination with the Japanese Embassy in Cairo, the Ministry of Youth and Sports held a meeting with a delegation from JICA to discuss means of bilateral cooperation mainly in the domain of youth.
First of all, JICA is one of the Japanese entities that relates to the function or the service that Japan work on in Egypt, as a close relation with the Egyptian government that serves the voluntary service dimension, and we had discussed the way of more cooperation in the coming year, or actually this year to start on, having volunteers in our youth centers, or what applicable to the criteria and the way of working in the volunteer system in JICA. And as well, we knew more about the fields that JICA works with. For example, we knew today that there is a way of training for the youth staff at the Ministry of Youth and Sports, and this is so much important from our side to enhance the capabilities of youth leaders at the Ministry of Youth, as we mean simply the future of the Ministry of Youth. As well, we discussed the dimension of the special needs, how we can work together either through the JICA or the entities that can serve these dimensions in cooperation and in link with Japan Embassy in Cairo.
The Japanese Embassy in Cairo, JICA, and the Egyptian government can work hand in hand to implement projects in so many fields, like sports and education. They also can do a lot to small projects in particular.
We introduced different grants or different cooperations that we, as the Japanese government, give. One of them is JICA. It's an agency that sends volunteers, Japanese volunteers, in different fields, among which can be many fields that would interest the ministry here. We were more interested on sending volunteers to Japan, which is at the meantime is not a program available, but we will be positively considering it in the future, I hope. As for the other grants that we give as the Japanese Embassy, or as the government of Japan, the biggest of which, or that can deal with the ministry here, is loans, or yen loans, given to different governmental ministries here in Egypt.
In order to achieve successful cooperation, Japan must first know quite well about Egypt and Egyptian. The Ministry of Youth and Sports has a big role to play here.
Japan needs more to know about Egypt, to get more in its culture, to get more in its NGOs. I mean, if we talk about youth centers as NGOs. And as non-governmental social organization, this is another sector that works under the Ministry of Social Solidarity, we can have more cultural program to get to know each other more. Japan as people in Japan, and the Egyptian people as well, they need to know each other more. It's not only one side giving.
few days ago, the Japanese Prime Minister's wife was in Cairo. She visited Cairo University and she met with the students of the Department of the Japanese Language. The students expressed their fascination of Japan. They also promised to present Egypt to the Japanese and present Japan to the Egyptian people. It's the youth who can only build bridges between cultures and between peoples. The event of today reveals that people in both Japan and Egypt are quite aware of this fact. Abir Shusha, 9 TV International.
Well, that brings us to the end of this episode of Inside Egypt. Hope you enjoyed it and tune in for more on Now TV.